some pieces of advice you would have for these folks?
I think, reading the classics is great to do. Really just trying to understand story, understand what intrigues you about story, and being, I think you have to love story in order to really do this job. And then I think if you're a writer, write. If you're a director, even if you can't physically direct, with a big camera, like take your iPhone out and just practice. I think that it's a particularly challenging time now, obviously, given COVID, because so much of what we do, and particularly on the global level, is relational. I think that that's the other thing, is that Europeans, Latin Americans, even the Indians, everything's very relational. I think that's the one thing about Americans that's very different, is that they're much more transactional. Yeah. But I do think that even given that, as well as I, we've had a relationship for years. So when you call me and say, will you do this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah. But if I didn't know you, if we hadn't met so many years ago, would I be that open to doing it? I don't know. Right. So I think that's the thing that's probably really challenging for young people right now, is that there's an inability to actually network. I was talking to an agent yesterday who was saying to me that she felt so badly for her assistant, because, when you're 22, 23, 24, and you get this job that you get paid no money to do, basically, and you're working your butt off, what makes it worthwhile is hanging out with your mailroom buddies, and that the cream rises to the top, and then you meet people, and then agents take you under their wing, or, so I think that's a huge challenge for sort of young talent right now. But I also think that there are outlets for people to express themselves creatively and to get noticed. Whether it's, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, Reels, I just think that, this period is really challenging for people, but I also think that sometimes when you're squeezed, you end up being more creative. So I think it's really about preparation and perseverance, and, just doing the work. Yeah. But it's a tough time right now.
One question we get asked a lot is, hey, I'm, young person, just getting started, but I have this, I'm sure you're going to laugh when I say it, but I have this script that I've written, and they ask, how do I get people to see my script or notice my script? And obviously, as we all know well, a lot of companies don't take, unsolicited submissions and the likes. Any advice for a young person who, legitimately maybe has a really interesting project with an interesting take, but they're like, what do I do now? How do I get people?
That's a really interesting question, especially now that it's not even go find an assistant in an agency who can read your script, who can kick it up it's just, that's tricky. I mean, the one thing that comes to mind is, I think, get some friends together and make a podcast. Yeah. Figure out how to
because you can do it now, and you can do it incredibly cheaply, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the great thing about technology. And, I'm sure the people watching this have more access and more knowledge about how technology could work for them than I do. Mm-hmm. But to me, I feel the words are what's important, and the voice of a script is what's important. So it's not necessarily if you have a ton of money to, splash something across the screen. If the story's great, words should be enough. So it's interesting, because it's almost retro in that it's old, sort of an old radio drama. Yeah. But I think it's probably doable. And I think owning your IP in that way and having something out in the market actually becomes more valuable, especially if you can just get some traction on it. And I think that, smart young people always seem to be managing to do that. So
that's a great piece of advice. Love that. So my final question is also in the advice world, but it's related to you personally. So what would you tell your younger Thomopoulos self if you could give that person advice now, going back? What would the advice be, or anything you would suggest that Thomopoulos does to build her career?
I would say, don't be afraid to take risks. And this is a business where you can feel like the world is coming to an end, And in one phone call, you can feel like things change on a dime. So no matter how bad it gets, just know that the next call or the next email or the next text can change your life.
Wow, that's really great. That's powerful. I love that. And
But don't you feel like it's so true? Like you can have the worst day and then you get one phone call and you're like, yes, I'm crushing it.
Yeah.
Like it's wild.
Particularly in the creative side, where you can get a call on Monday where 5 people reject your project, and then Tuesday someone calls and says they want to finance this amazing project you have.
Right.
Just
yeah.
And reignited.
I mean, I just think it's like with anything in life. I think everyone's going to get knocked down. It's the difference is who gets up.
Go to college. If you're in high school, go to college. As I said,
well, that's important here, because not everyone would probably say that, right?
Yeah, because it really gave me education. Like I would not have normally been able to do some of the roles or have the access in my personality.
It's worldliness.
Right. There's so many more opportunities for people to do things because you can do it on your own. I encourage people, if they want to be an actor, write your own thing, write a vehicle for yourself, write. Tell your story. No one can tell your story. Everyone's story is different. If you tell your story, I'm actually writing a piece right now about my first week at Georgetown.
Huh.
And that's going to be, that's my, hopefully I want to direct it. I'm writing and directing it. And I'm excited but it is about Georgetown and my experience being a Black man in my first week at Georgetown. So for instance, my first week at Georgetown, there was on my RA's door, on our door, Michael Thomas and I were both Black. On our door, my freshman year, the first week, it says, hey, Chris, Mike, Jungle Bunnies.
Wow. Holy shit.
My first week. So I brought it to the RA and I said, did you see this? Hey, Chris, he goes, I was like, no, that's not funny.
Wow.
And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And I remember doing it. So it's an experience. So everyone's story is different. So I encourage people to, if they're going to be going to acting, write. A lot of people, Mike Birbiglia, came out of Georgetown.
John Mulaney, all these guys.
Yeah, they all write. They're all writers. So I'm also trying to write myself. And you got to believe in yourself. As I said, I funded myself. Funding that I have, I know that I can get to the point that I will get to eventually, and not give up. You kind of not give up, and it depends. You can't be in it for the fame, and you can't be in it for the money. You got to be in it for your expression. How you're expressing yourself, and is it a part of you? Performing has always been a part of me. It's in me, and it's how I get to express myself through different things. And the work part, when I get to actually be on set, that's the fun part. It's the job part, the getting the roles, all that kind of stuff. That's the work part.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that. And it's not, as I said, an overnight success is 8 years, they say, on average. And people give up after a certain amount of time. And I've said my success has really come from, I consider myself successful for my longevity, because I know many people that have been in the game and then it fizzles out, and then they have to do something else.
Right.
So it's not the roles that I've done or the heights that I've gotten to, but I feel like the consistency of having
which speaks to your ability to evolve and have that versatility. You said, I'm playing dads. I can credibly do that.
Right. Evolve and adapt, and take care of yourself. You really got to take care of you. You really got to take care of yourself. And, but even in any profession, you have to be bold. I think being bold and not being afraid to fail, because we're all going to fail. And I've failed miserably in a lot of different instances, but you have to be bold. That's the only way to swing as hard as you can to hit the ball out. You can't do that. You can't hit a home run by doing this. You just can't. It's impossible. You can hit a lot of balls maybe, but it's never going to get out of the infield. You got to swing as hard as you can. And even if you're smaller, if you Jose Altuve and you're 5'8", you got a big bat, you got to swing that bat as hard as you can, even though they cheated. But
I was going to bring up
I'm a
Dustin.
Yankee fans.
I was going to bring up Dustin Pedroia because I'm a Boston fan and they cheated.
Exactly. But no, you got to swing for the fences, like, and be bold, and create your own story. Create your own
That's
story.
great. That's great.
And people will follow that. If you go off, if you're a comedian, for instance, or something, someone is going to get you. Don't worry about if no one's getting you right now. Larry David, no one got Larry David. No one got Larry David. He was a stand-up. He was a writer. No one got Larry David until Larry David wrote something for himself. He wrote Seinfeld, very successful. Even though that was him, no one knew Larry David from Seinfeld. They know Jerry Seinfeld. But when he started doing, I mean, even though it took him till he was, 50, I guess? Or I don't even know how old he was when he started. But now Larry David is Larry David, and everyone knows him as Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Right.
So no matter what age you are, you always have to evolve and adapt, and someone will like it. If you're laughing at it, someone's going to laugh at it.
I would say a few things. One is like is the hustling, is calling as many, what I did when I first moved out was, cold calling anyone you would to see if they would take a meeting. Looking at, any opportunity to find a job, and working as hard as you can in the networking side of it. That's a very important part of it. Mm-hmm. But also saying yes to opportunities. Like, I was, like I said before, like I didn't set out to work in television, because at the time, like, television wasn't like as prestigious as it is now. It wasn't like it wasn't what it is. But I said yes because I just wanted my foot in the door, and right. It ended up eventually leading me to a good place. So I think, like, where opportunities arise, embracing them and saying yes to them, not necessarily knowing where they're to lead, but knowing that you're getting on a path. Yeah. Because it's easy to be precious about some idea you have of yourself and how you're going to get there, but things don't always work out as you expect. Yeah. But I think, like, having momentum and staying busy, but also knowing eventually where you want to go is important. But so saying yes to opportunities, I think, is a big thing. Also, like, writing. It's like, it seems obvious, but like, writing every day as much as you can, setting a schedule for yourself, because you get better. By the time I had been writing since sophomore year of college, I guess, and my first scripts weren't very good, or maybe some of them were okay, I don't know, but I kept getting better. So by the time I had my first shot on The Mentalist to write a script, I was ready for it, and because you never know when an opportunity like that's going to arise, and you want to make sure you have the skills to take full advantage of it. Because if I hadn't written 10 spec scripts that I put in the drawer that'll never come out, I wouldn't have been able to write a good episode of The Mentalist, and I wouldn't have gotten hired on staff. So it's like, even if, like, the one script that you spend 6 months on doesn't do anything for you, it's okay, because you're getting better at the process. And also, I would say enjoying what you do, because it is, it took 5-6 years for me to get on staff, but which felt like a long time at the time. But if I hadn't been, like, enthusiastic and happy where I was doing, then I wouldn't have lasted that long. Mm-hmm. So I think, like, if you're not happy with if you're not happy with your your day to day, and if you're not enjoying writing, and where you are, then it's not worth it. I think you have to, like, because the business can be so challenging at times, and getting your foot in the door. And even once you have your foot in the door, there are fallow periods, and I've had them too. Every writer does. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you have to enjoy, like, love what you do, because if you don't, then it's not, because it can be so difficult. It's not worth it. And ultimately, if you don't have that passion for it, I don't think you'll be successful. Every writer I've known who has achieved success loves being, loves the process and wouldn't want to do anything else. Not to say like, writing is hard and like sometimes you don't want to do it, but it's like you have, like the piece of advice I got early, which I think is true, is like, only do this if like you can't imagine yourself doing anything else. And I think that's true.
Yeah. One question we get a lot is if somebody is young and not established yet, but has material or has an idea or a concept or has written a script and they want to get it out into the world, that's a hard one, and one of the challenges I always bring up to young people is there's this catch-22 about like needing representation, right? So it's hard to you can't just send things unsolicited to studios because they usually won't take them because of legal liability. So if someone came to you and said, I've got this script, David, I think is really great. It's a TV script or an idea for a show or a movie. What would your advice be to them?
I mean, there are certainly overnight success stories. Like my first boss, well, that's not even not true. I was going to say my first boss was overnight, but that's not even true. There are overnight success stories where someone reads a script or hears an idea and like, oh my God, I have to make that. But I think that's so rare.
Right.
That can't be your expectation. That maybe it will happen to you, but probably it won't. So I would say, yes, it's like you should be trying to write something and get it to an agent or get it to a studio executive, because that's what you need to do in order to, that's like one of the things that you should be doing to try to be successful, but you can't rely on that. Like it's good to try to hustle and do that, but like, don't make that your only, don't put all your eggs in that basket. Like be writing another thing, be directing another thing, be trying to get your first assistant job. Don't rely on this one piece of material, because it's probably going to take 15 pieces of material before suddenly like, oh my God, like, a studio wants to buy it and they want to make your show. But it's like, it's usually a really long process. And I told you the story when we talked before. I did that same thing a number of times. And I did one of them, I did that at Georgetown, and the director, Peter Weir, was speaking at Georgetown after a screening of Gallipoli, and I had my very first screenplay, and I ran up to him after the question and answer, and I said, "Please, will you read this?" And he handed it right back to me, and he said, "Son, you're going to have to take the long road yourself." And I thought that was really harsh. I would never say that to someone, but
Classic. I love it.
But it's true.
Yeah, I love the chutzpah of you like handing him the script, which is, you need that chutzpah. But then I love the retort by you. That's just classic, absolutely classic. And then I guess the other point that it made me think of, because you mentioned the web series you did, I guess in today's world, because technology is democratized and made creating not as expensive, I guess you could say to that person, hey, try to make a little short vignette about your story, or put it up on the web, get a couple friends and direct them to creating it or something like that. I mean, is that even a realistic piece of advice?
Yeah, I think,
right. I mean, you can create something out of nothing now, really.
Absolutely. I think
which you couldn't do in 2004 as easily.
Not as easily, no. There was, I don't think YouTube existed then.
Right. Didn't.
But absolutely, I would say like do that because it's fun, because this is what you love to do.
Yeah.
And like, it's great to have like a dream of like someone's going to see this and like, and I'm going to, and it's going to be on Comedy Central or something, and I'm going to have my big break. And like everyone has those dreams, but like, don't do it just because, don't do it just because of that. Do it because you love it, and because you want to be working with your friends and put something out there of yourself. Yeah. Because I think like the greatest satisfaction I have, some of the greatest satisfaction you have as a writer is just like that feeling of like fulfillment when you're writing something that you feel is like, is good. And like, you feel like you're doing good work. And that's why you should, that's like the biggest reason to be doing something like that. Don't not do it because like, if you're not going to do it because like, the chances are so low that you're not going to succeed, then, you're probably, you're probably,
Probably not the right vocation.
Yeah. It's like, you want to be, it's true. It's, it's hard to say, but it's true to some degree.
It's a great question. I do get asked it a lot because usually I'm asked like how I started, and the way I started just doesn't exist.
Right. Based on based on the story you told.
Yeah. I mean, remember, I had to send
unique.
scripts. Scripts had to be sent by mail, $3.95, that one stamp that, it was it was crazy. So I think it's taking advantage of the technology that is available and getting yourself out there. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because the thing that I do love about this industry versus like when I was trying to be an investment banker is that there technically aren't any rules to getting in. Like you go to college or not go to college.
Yeah.
You go to film school or not go to film school. Yeah. There's no, like, you don't have to
be a business school undergraduate degree and become a creative.
Yes, exactly. So that's the great part. But it's kind of like I was compared to like a Monet painting. Like from far away, you're like, I can do this, and you get up close, and you're like, oh, it's a lot of dots. What? It's like you start to see all these obstacles in your way. So I think it is understanding that you have to have the guts for it and the ability to be really open and just super ambitious. And so if you decide that you want to be a director, you got a camera, it's on your phone, start putting stuff up. There's Instagram, there's Vimeo, there's so many things. Start putting stuff up, start getting people to understand who you are visually. I keep thinking about this kid, I say kid because everybody's younger than me, Julian Bass, who just had great videos that he started putting up, and then one really started taking hold, and it got sent around, and then finally got sent to Iger at Disney, and then like, he's on his way, but he just continued to put stuff up. He also, he's mad talented as well.
Yeah.
So, and if you're a writer, there's plenty of places to put stuff up. You can think about doing something on Wattpad. You can write your own novel and put it up on Kindle Free. There's a lot of things you can do to get your creative out there so people can at least somehow find you. Because it is hard, because for me, I can't take a script that doesn't come in from an agent or a manager or a lawyer or somebody that I know. Legally, I just cannot do it. That makes it hard. Every company is the same way. Yep. And I know that can feel really unfair, but there's a real reason. People like to sue. That's so right. You can't do it. So that does make it hard. So I do think that you just have to just be as persistent as you can in figuring out how to get forward. If you want to be a producer, you can always find somebody that wants to figure out how to shoot something, and then you are producing because you're putting that thing together. You're making sure that the financing's there, whether it is like your credit card or whether it is like, do you have a camera? Here's an extra Android, let's shoot it. Like, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I think that's really the only advice I can give. Like, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of film schools because it's a lot of money, but it is how you start to form your tribe. And I think the most important thing I can say is you have to have your tribe. It is who you come up with, it's who you lean on, it's who hears about jobs, it's who you decide to shoot a short film with. It's everything. And like,
that's really a good point.
Yeah, today I'm still with the same tribe that I really started out with. It's still a group of female who are it runs a range of, there's a couple filmmakers, most are execs, others are producers, because we came up all at the same time in the indie world in New York. And it's just important, and that's the most important thing, is identifying your tribe, because that is how you get through. And again, that is like one of the nice things about film schools, that you do form your tribe, and you do hear more about things. But I don't know, is there a better way to spend $80,000? Maybe.